And
Pentagon,
I'm fucking livid that we are stuck in the timeline where Alex Jones is right.
Why aren't the Amish afraid of COVID? Because they don't have TVs.
You brought a freaking guillotine.
Oh no! Oh, okay, no.
What the fuck do you have on your face, Lydia?
Being a victim of a tragedy doesn't make you an expert in public policy.
Remember, they lost the Afghan war 10 years ago.
They were posting some crazy shit like months ago. Remember that?
It's that democracy is a system that reinforces authoritarian ideals.
I remember thinking, man, governments are not going to like this shit.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, shit posters, activists, and people of the internet, thank you for tuning in for another episode of O'Donnell for Liberty. As always, I'm your host, Justin. Before we get started, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications to keep up to date with future shows and content. And if you enjoy the program, you can be an early supporter by following the Patreon link in the description and joining our production team. If you want to keep in touch between shows, follow me on social media and join our community Discord channel by following the links in the description as well. Tonight, we're going to be talking about social media, building a community, and not letting the drama get you down. We're going to take questions, so make sure you hit the like button, leave some comments, and tell us what you think in the chat. And give a warm welcome to tonight's guest, social media manager to niche internet celebrities, Caitlin Cloven. Caitlin, thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me. I really liked my intro, like social media manager for niche celebrities.
I mean, so some people here might not know who you are because you do operate other people's Twitter accounts for most of your interactions.
I prefer it that way, yeah.
Yeah. Give a brief introduction to yourself. What do you do? What's your past? How'd you get to doing what you do?
Oh boy. Okay, so I was a stay-at-home mom that had no hobbies or interests. And then the Dakota Access Pipeline happened. And I was like, hey, that's fucked up. So I went from like I wouldn't say establishment Democrat because like I didn't really like the establishment, but I didn't care about politics too much. So I was like a regular Democrat to like fuck the police anarchists pretty quick. Although I didn't understand the ideological parts of anarchism yet. I was just really, really mad at cops. So I then saw Gary Johnson, which I'm a little embarrassed that Gary Johnson's the one that got me in, but he did. He did an interview and actually mentioned the Dakota Access Pipeline. I was like, oh, fuck yeah. Like somebody actually cares about this. That's dope. So I got involved with my state party in Minnesota and was quickly given 17 jobs. Like in the open, that's you show up and they're like, oh, hey, you're hired. You can do everything now. It's like, oh, okay, cool. But yeah, no, I started out in like some meme groups like Gary Johnson's Dink Meme Stash. And then I found my tribe, essentially. Josh Smith was like my brother for like years. Vinnie Marshall, Lonnie Dupree, who still runs Think Liberty. Just all kinds of people were involved in that. And we started some meme pages. We actually started Dankertarians and Fakertarians.
And whoa, how they have fallen.
There's a lot of things to say about that, yeah.
So, I mean,
after Liberty Hangout, so like it was very, very valiant effort, and we did pretty cool. Like it was a lot of fun. We started Dankertarians, and then we had a falling out with a certain communist who identified as a cat named Matt Hill. And then we started Think Liberty, which was much better and catless. So yay. But then during this whole thing, I started like kind of getting into marketing. A friend of mine who was on the page as well, like had a background in marketing. He's like, you really have like a mind for this. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Okay. I don't really have any skills, or I've had like, I guess, skills, but I didn't really know how to apply them. So I really like dug into the marketing stuff. And over the last 4 years, taught myself how to do digital marketing and social media marketing. And I've built pages. Like I was the assistant social media director for Being Libertarian for a while. I grew Think Liberty from like obviously 0 followers when we started to 80,000 in a year. And then a friend of mine from one of my shitposting groups just happened to be connected with the campaign manager for a certain presidential candidate. Remain nameless. She was the only one that was paying. So I was like, yeah, I'll take that job. So I ran her social media from 2019 to the nomination. And then I went from a 1-person team to a 160-person team overnight. And I was like, oh, fuck. So I went from little league to big league really fucking fast. So I ran her social media for, since 2019, the nomination, and then about a month after the nomination. And then I was moved to the vice presidential team on my birthday.
At which point, the presidential candidate's social media just kind of went to shit and started getting really woke.
No comment. But I had a really great time on Spike's team. I had been working with Spike already, after the nomination, because I was really pumped that Spike was the VP. Because, me and Spike, we have, the similar sense of humor. We get along really well. We always, just click, right away. I would write things for Joe, and I already knew, this is not going to get approved. So I was like, hey, Spike, we should take this post. So we were already working together. I don't like to talk shit, but the only part of the campaign that was actually working together, the Team Supreme folks and the rest of, the Prags and things, the only part of the campaign that was working together was social media. So I had a lot of Team Supreme people on my team. James Weeks was a really big part of Joe Jorgensen's social media team in the beginning. He was a huge help. Brian Ellison was on the team. He was great. A lot of people from all over the party spectrum joined the team. But yeah, then I moved over on my birthday. Details we not mentioned. But it was on my fucking birthday, and I'm still salty about it. Whatever. So anyway, I started working with Spike, and I continued to work with Spike after the election. He's my brother. I wouldn't say the brother I never had, because I have a lot of brothers, but a brother that we didn't grow up with. A brother from another mother. There you go. So yeah, then I worked for Vermin Supreme. I love Vermin. He was one of the best humans I've ever met in my entire life. I started that literally the night of the election. My job ended with Joe, and my job with Vermin started at the exact same moment.
I feel like you can get away with a lot more when you're running the social media for a living meme, as opposed to somebody trying to run a respectful candidacy for president.
It was amazing. I loved it so much because I continued on Spikes afterwards, and I was on Vermin's. So my favorite thing to do would be have them talk to each other on Twitter, and that was just really just me sitting on my couch switching back and forth between the my ass off, and it was so great. And that's the best way to learn their voices too, because I already knew Spike's voice. I can speak as Spike pretty well, but learning Vermin is a challenge, because just when you think you've found the line, then he gets on his Twitter and just blows that line out of the water, and you're like, oh, okay, everything I thought I knew is not right. So cool. The very first tweet I had to make on Vermin's Twitter was that he beat Alex Trebek. Because I beat whoever whenever somebody died, and Alex Trebek just happened to die, and that was the first tweet I had to make. And I'm like, oh my god, I'm gonna tweet for this.
That whole tweet thing that Vermin had, it really got it started as the I beat whenever somebody dropped out of the race for president.
Yeah.
And then who was it that died the first one? Was it John McCain? Or?
No. It was Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Oh,
yeah.
And that one didn't get backlash?
Oh, that one got so much backlash.
But then
it was so political. And then Alex Trebek happened, and I was like, oh, crap. I wasn't sad. I don't get sad over celebrity deaths. But it was oh fuck, this is gonna be something. But I don't know. I fell in love with it, and we were really trying to bring out the direct action and the mutual aid side of Vermin, the stuff that is behind the satire, kind of taking the satire off for a moment and talking about the real shit. So we were doing all kinds of really fun stuff there, and then I kind of realized that's what I want to do. So I've been kind of pouring a lot of my extra energy into direct action and mutual aid and training people and helping causes with the skills that I have with digital marketing and things like that. So
I think we used to joke that for a while during the primary and run up to convention, that Spike's whole job in existing was just to be Vermin's translator to normal libertarians.
Yeah.
And Like they discussed last night on the Tower Power Gang episode with Spike his need for an anger translator. That somebody should start a angry Spike Cohen Twitter account and just
It exists. It's called Spot Conan.
But does it just take everything Spike tweets and say it as if he were angry?
So occasionally, there's not enough hours in the day really for me that consistently. But yeah, no, Spot Conan exists, and it's just Spike with laser eyes. And his tagline instead of "You are the power" is "I'm Spot Conan and you have no power," and I love it. It's my outlet. So whenever Spike tells me, "Hey, you can't tweet that," like if I have like a really funny joke, like it's good shit, and like he thinks it's good shit, but he's like, we can't tweet that. So Spunk tweets it. Or if there's something Spike wants to tweet, and I'm like, no, you can't do that, I'll put it on Spunks.
So I mean, I take offense to the notion that there's something you can't tweet. Because
okay, so there's a thing called brand image and tone and voice, and sometimes it doesn't fit within your objectives. So.
Because I've been challenging the idea that Twitter is a place to have reasonable conversations by forcing Twitter to have unreasonable conversations lately, and I've been seeing more success by having unreasonable conversations with people than having reasonable ones. Like, hey, Timothy McVeigh did nothing wrong. That starts a conversation.
It certainly does.
Or Ted Kaczynski did nothing wrong. It starts a conversation. Or your local school board has a home address.
Okay, Arvin.
Here's the thing. Even when I was on the LNC, when Arvin was up for suspension for the things that he did say on Twitter, when I wrote my message to the LNC with my vote to suspend him, I was very clear that I agreed with everything Arvin said. But the state chairs of my region wanted Arvin suspended, which was the reason I was voting to suspend Arvin. To this day, I'll say I don't think Arvin Vora did anything wrong. If anything, Arvin Vora gave us so much comedic material that we got through 2 years until the next election without eating ourselves apart.
That's true. And I missed that. There was a page, it was called Tactful Arvin Vora. And it was my favorite page on Facebook. And honestly, dogging on Arvin, brought us all together. I would love to go back to the days where Arvin Vora was our biggest problem in the LP. Because at least it was funny. Now it's just it's pathetic and gross, and I don't want anything to do with it.
Nowadays, we have membership purges and coups and petty tyrants trying to struggle for power. And the greatest part about that is the irony of how little power there is to struggle over in the LP.
Right. You guys are fighting over 2%. It's so cute.
Well, my crazy part is fighting over state affiliates that don't control their ballot line. The reality is, in most states where the Libertarian Party exists, the party itself does not control who can run for office, who can be on the ballot, who can go out and claim to be a libertarian. The party has no control over that at all.
Mm-hmm.
So when people are fighting over who's going to be the chair of the party and who's going to control the party and having these major coups and membership struggles and purges, they're fighting over a Twitter account.
Yeah, basically.
And
I don't like that it's a two-sided fight either. It's I kind of don't like either side. I think they're both kind of whiny little bitches. You have the one side that's anti-Mises, and I can see points on that side. And then you have the Mises side, and I can see points on that side. But they both are just missing the forest for the trees. If you want to go after a certain subset of people and try and recruit them, great, you do that. If you're skilled at doing that, go for it. You don't have to say this is the only group of people that we have to go after. This is the only ones that have potential. How dare you reach out to the left, or how dare you reach out to the right? Shut the fuck up and just do what you're good at. Let other people do what they're good at.
So Cowboy points out that they're fighting over control of the delegates, and the reality is, Cowboy, they're fighting over control of the delegates to decide who's on the LNC and who controls the national LP Twitter account, because the national LP hasn't done shit to help local candidates, down ballot candidates, or elect candidates where they can actually do the most good in affecting people's everyday lives in their hometowns, on local boards, zoning commissions, school boards, where they actually have an effect. That's usually left to the people, and the party doesn't have the resources, or let me get this right, the party has had resources and chosen to waste them on shit that didn't matter rather than focusing on that.
I will never let that die. It was $100,000 that they were like trying to figure out, like, how do we make this work? We're broke, but we spend $100,000 on a fucking newsletter. I was like, all you have to do is make an opt-in for new members. But no, that is too complicated. Apparently,
there's 2 newsletters actually.
I know.
So if you anybody watching wants to complain to your LNC representative about the mismanagement of the budget and what they're doing, the LP sends out 2 newsletters. They send out a newsletter every month to people who have monthly pledges, and then they send out a newsletter every couple months to every member of the party. There's no reason that they should bother sending out the newsletter to every member of the party. That should be a digital email, and they should use it to encourage people to sign up for monthly pledges to get the monthly newsletter.
Yep.
Like a subscription fee.
It's lead generation and user funnels and all that digital marketing shit that the party thinks is not important. Yeah. But yeah, it's frustrating.
So you're speaking of both sides being retarded and both sides of the fight not really knowing what they're doing. And Masha did have a question right when we started. She wants to know, are you interested in recruiting libertarians for whom the LP feels too lefty?
Yes. So it's a very nuanced answer, but when it comes down to it, yes. I'm trying to think the best way to word this without coming out like I'm a socialist. I'm not a socialist, but we should be focusing more on single issue recruitment. There's another issue with like the way we have membership structured that can kind of cause like fights about this kind of thing, but that's a whole other TED talk. But yeah, no, I think that we should try and recruit anybody who is open to libertarian solutions for any issue. And not just recruit for like membership. I'm talking recruit for voting, because that's what we are. We're a political party. We're supposed to get votes. It's not about just membership and donors. I mean, that's great. You have to have that to function. But the very first level of the funnel of funneling people into the party and getting the memberships and creating new libertarians, that first level is votes. So we have to get them to vote for us. How do we do that? We show them solutions. Really great example last year with criminal justice reform. Now, I'm not going to defend everything that came out of the campaign that had to do with criminal justice reform and, racism and all that stuff. But we did connect with a lot of people on the left. I'm not talking about liberals. There's a big difference between liberals and leftists. Now, leftists, pretty anti-establishment. It depends on what flavor of leftists, obviously. I prefer to focus on the ones on the bottom of the spectrum. Your Green Party people, your left anarchists, anyone who like hates the state, basically. We made a lot of progress recruiting people, at least for voting, to vote for us based on criminal justice reform alone, ending qualified immunity, ending cash bail, ending the prison or the school to prison pipelines, things like that, because there are major issues, and we do have solutions for these things. Just because they're not going to change their entire ideology tomorrow to be libertarians doesn't mean we can't have a coalition-based thing with them. It doesn't mean we can't have conversations with them. It doesn't mean that we can't work together on different things to accomplish them. Now, we're not going to keep those people every year, getting them to vote for us over and over. But if we can get them to vote for us this cycle by talking to them about what they care about and not changing our principles, never, ever, this always gets kind of lost in translation when I have this conversation, but we don't change our principles at all. We just learn how to talk to those people in a way that connects with them emotionally, because I know, facts don't care about feelings, but people think with their feelings. So we have to, utilize that as a tool when it comes to marketing and messaging. So talking to people in their language, in the terminology they use about the problems that we all agree are problems, and saying, hey, the solutions that you think are the solutions are actually going to, you know, perpetuate the problem that you're trying to solve. Here's other solutions that will actually solve the problems that we agree are problems. We have the same end goal. It's just a different way to get there. So yeah, no, I think we should be talking to people on the left. We should be talking to people on the right. But the thing is, if you're not good at talking to people on the left, don't. If you're not good at talking to people on the right, don't. Leave it to the people who are good at it. Everyone has a place in the liberty movement. You don't need to force your way into something that you're not good at. Find something you're good at and do it. It doesn't need to be somewhere in the party. It doesn't need to be podcasting. It doesn't need to be out petitioning or whatever the fuck. It doesn't need to be these things that everyone tells you need to do. We need a lot of people on the back end of things. We need a lot of people like writing and writing ad copy. We need a lot of people doing advertising. We need people out there holding signs on fucking bridges. Like, we need everything. So find what you're good at and stick to it, but don't tear down the other people doing other things, because we have such a small movement and such a small place in the grand scheme of politics that it's going to take a diversity of tactics. It's going to take several lines of practice to make any kind of way forward. So if we focus on single issue stuff, and this isn't the only way to do it, we can try and go out there and convert people to libertarianism wholesale. You might find some people it works on. But the biggest strategy that I've seen that works well for at least getting people in for votes and then getting that door open so you can plant those seeds and start converting them slowly over time is single issue stuff. So yes, tons of stuff on the left that we can talk to them about, criminal justice reform, poverty, all kinds of shit that we connect with on the left.
Well, that's really the thing. It's like everybody's a libertarian on something. That might not be a libertarian, but everybody has libertarian views on something. Mm-hmm. Even David Hogg yesterday, when he was attempting to tweet out reasons why you should get the vaccine, he's like, you think vaccine mandates are tyrannical? Well, how about these? And then started a super thread of reasons you shouldn't trust the government. And it was like a libertarian platform list. It's like the Patriot Act is still in effect. Violent and racist policing is still a thing. I'm like, and like libertarians entered the chat like, yes, and like, but like even David Hogg recognizes that there is tyranny in government overreach and government oppression, while he's championing for more government to fix all the things that he perceives as problems. I have found in my outreach and my dealing with people that one of the big issues that libertarians have when communicating outside their own sphere and outside their own agreement echo chamber is that when we try and debate and argue with the left, we do agree on the issues. Like libertarians and the left tend to agree on the issues and just violently disagree on what the solution is to fix those problems. Libertarians and the right tend to agree on what needs to be done, but disagree on what it's solving. And so like libertarians and like hardcore conservatives won't agree that something is a problem, and will come around to completely different reasonings for the same action to solve what they think is the problem, but never agree on what the problems is, and so can't form a lasting alliance. Libertarians and the left, when you agree on what the problem is, but you disagree on how to fix it, that's actually easier to me. But the problem is then, how do I say this? Not letting them convince you that their methodologies are the appropriate way. And I think that's the big problem a lot of people in the Mises caucus have had. When Nick Sarwark said, I'm taking the party on a left turn, I don't actually think that was the worst tactical maneuver at the time, because at the time it was Trump hysteria and the left was ready to revolt against the dirty deeds done to Bernie Sanders. And we agreed with them on what the problems were. I think the problem was enough people from the left were recruited and came in, and there was not a sufficient move to like teach them our ways so much as just get them into the numbers. Yes. That we've kind of been infested by the woke culture and the words are violence. And if you're not nice to everybody, you need to be cancel culture. It started to permeate libertarianism. And even some like old school anti-left, like right libertarians have started to embrace the cancel culture aspect and like shift their tune to be more like woke leftist and politeness politics, as I like to call it.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. There's a lot of that. And I think a lot of that kind of gets lumped in together. Like, there should be a little bit of gatekeeping. There's racing because, okay, so we do have a small party. We do have a small movement. The smallest thing is a lot louder in a smaller party. So even if it is one tweet, like in the grand scheme of things, like it's one tweet, who's the fuck? But a lot of people give a fuck because it's a small party. We have a small voice, so it dominates that a little bit more. So there does need to be a little bit of, it has gotten a little insane, which is why I take frequent Twitter breaks and Facebook breaks and Messenger breaks.
The craziest part to me is that throughout the whole thing, I remember when I was on the LNC, people lost their minds when myself, Karen Ann Harless, and Josh Smith had just a resolution to affirm that the platform supported property rights. And people lost their minds, demanding we resign from the LNC because we wanted to purge membership. It was never anything about purging membership. It was just put out a resolution to remind our members to read the damn platform before going off and spouting things as libertarian that weren't in the platform. And the whole crusade against the Mises Caucus has been that they want to join and purge the party of anyone they disagree with. But the only purges we've seen and the only attempts at purges have been trying to purge Mises Caucus members out of the party. It's the hypocrisy.
Well, to be fair, there's been some pretty loud voices from the Mises Caucus saying that they want to purge people from the left, like explicitly saying that. And like, I get it. I get both sides of that. Like, I get that. It's only, a couple of people from the caucus saying that. It doesn't mean with the caucus. But optics are everything. Perception is reality.
The Mises Caucus is the same people that wrote off the Libertarian Party because Joe Jorgensen had a bad tweet.
I didn't write that tweet, by the way.
After your birthday.
That is a rumor that's going around that was like the last thing I did. I did not do that.
No parting shot out the door? You're not vindictive enough to sink the ship on your way out of the lifeboats?
No, my revenge was doing better on spikes, which it did. And right before the election, we surpassed Bill Weld on Facebook. So eat it, Bill
on
Weld.
Facebook is a metric that matters?
It's a vanity metric that, like, it was one of my own stupid little milestones. It didn't actually matter, but I was like, if anything, I'm going to surpass Bill fucking Weld on Facebook page followers before this election's over, because he was a fucking governor. Like, we shouldn't have surpassed that dude, but we did right before. It made me happy because when I switched over to Spikes, he had like 15,000 followers, and we got it up to 95 at the end.
So that's one of the things that's crazy to me is that people do look at these metrics as a measure of success. I don't look at I look at my Twitter followers as a just pure vanity thing, but it is just pure vanity. How much does it actually reflect success in what you're doing? Because I came to this conclusion the other day when I was scrolling through Twitter trying to reach out to individual particular people I did want to invite on the show. And right now there are 2 sitting Libertarian Party state reps in the country, and I was trying to reach out. Neither one of them has a damn Twitter account.
Yeah.
Like, the people who are winning their elections aren't on Twitter.
Well, so there's causation and correlation. Yeah. Win an election and have a very active Twitter account. It's just about your priorities. If you're not good at Twitter, I actually tell people, even if they're not good at Twitter, you should still have one just because of SEO and Google rankings and things like that. It's like a whole thing. But so I'm not a big fan that they don't have Twitter accounts, because they should. But yeah, no, it's not everything. And I say that as someone who is I make a living doing social media marketing and stuff. So yeah, no, it's not everything. And there's a lot of vanity metrics, and there's a lot of people who look at analytics and think they know what they're doing, and they have no fucking clue what they're looking at.
So why don't you talk about that? So everyone who watches this, most people are on Twitter. A lot of the podcast sphere, we use Twitter as our promotion and as our lead source to get people to watch the shows and follow up with the shows. Twitter's how usually I go and find guests to bring on the show. And Twitter is how all of our state parties deliver the majority of their messaging. And there has been some disagreement, violently, about Twitter content and how well it succeeds, and whether or not what some people view as a success is a success. What metrics on Twitter, what metrics on social media do you use to determine success?
All of them together. You can't just look at one, because it might show your impressions are at millions, but if your link clicks are really low, or if your like followers are really low, or if your engagement rate is really low, then it's really not that good. You have to look at them all. Like, this is hard because like I think in pictures and diagrams and shit because I'm like Rain Man. It's hard to put into words, but no, you have to look at them all like kind of okay. Like you've seen Iron Man, right?
Yep.
Okay, like he's at the table and then the hologram pops up and then he can like move the hologram around, and that's kind of how you have to look at analytics. You have to look at them all like as a whole. So if there's like a big, gap in some ratio or whatever between two metrics, then you know that there's something up. The biggest metric that is the most important is your conversions. So you determine your conversions by different, looking at different metrics, but your website clicks, your followers, whatever's on your funnel. So if you have any kind of marketing background, you know what a user funnel is. You have your people who see your tweets, like basic Twitter funnel. Like they see your tweets, they engage with your tweets, they follow you, and then they have clicked on your website, and then they've either made a purchase or become a member or donated or whatever. That's the bottom. If people are only hitting, your top 1 or 2 levels of your funnel, but never hitting that 3rd or 4th, that's a problem. You have a breakdown between level 2 and 3. So you have to figure out how to get people to convert. That's your conversion rate. You have to, that's the biggest metric that's important. You can have a fuck ton of impressions. That doesn't mean you're doing well. You can have a fuck ton of engagement. That doesn't mean you're doing well. Usually engagement and impressions will be, not close, but they'll be, tied together. So if one is high, the other's usually pretty high just because of the way algorithms work. But yeah, no, those are not the ones that matter. Those are literally called vanity metrics because they don't matter. They can inform your decisions. They can inform a lot of things, but on their own, they mean nothing.
And the ratio means nothing too. That's one thing I like to point out to people. The most common trend you see on Twitter when somebody has bad content is ratio. And people think the ratio is a bad thing, not understanding the Twitter algorithm. My most successful tweet ever had over 100 million impressions and tripled the size of my Twitter following within 3 days was ratio. Because every time somebody doesn't like it, comments on it, they show it to all their friends.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't realize that. So I sure the majority of my comments were negative, but I ended up getting more new follows than negative comments.
Well, if your new follows surpassed your negative comments, then that's good. If it didn't surpass it, I would say it's not that good. That was just law of averages. Of course, you're going to get some new followers. Right. But yeah, it's hard to make those determinations because it's a very case by case basis. You have to kind of look at the whole thing together. The Iron Man hologram.
So, what do you advise for someone who all they see they're looking on the liberty movement from outside? They're a budding libertarian. They go to Twitter and look up a libertarian hashtag and just see the drama and the pettiness and the infighting.
Oh, you sweet summer child. Get the fuck off Twitter. Honestly, that's the best advice I can get. Get the fuck off Twitter. Go to Facebook, honestly. Fuck Facebook. Totally hate Facebook. But you don't, there is an element of, shittiness on Facebook, but it's not quite as bad as Twitter just because the way the platform is made. Facebook will have a little bit more if you really want to. I got my start in Facebook groups. Very boomer of me at age 24, but whatever.
Even though, Twitter has become the new timeline, the new news feed for most Americans, though.
Yeah. Well, not as much as you think, actually. It's still 9th on the list of social media platforms in the U.S.
Of social media platforms, but what if you just put it as a news source against news apps?
4th.
Right.
It's Reddit. Reddit's the big one. Get the fuck on Reddit. Everyone needs to be on Reddit. It's the one that has millions of people on there, daily users. It's the most underutilized platform in the liberty movement.
Because it's a toxic cesspool that's worse than Twitter.
Sure, but you have the ability to create new spaces.
And then people come to those spaces and become toxic cesspools and autistic assholes.
Well, that's just the liberty movement. No offense, liberty movement, but we need to learn how to, interact with people well. and stop being so I'm not even gonna say it, but you know what I'm thinking.
All right. So, what's the worst tweet you've seen the Libertarian Party send out?
Oh, that is so hard.
Single worst. What's the worst piece of messaging you've seen a state affiliate put out on an official page?
Oh, a state affiliate. I was thinking more campaign. Well, now that I'm thinking of it, the campaign, the Alan Dershowitz Supreme Court pick was pretty fucking bad. But state affiliate or national, I don't want to go with the obvious because I know there's been bad ones, but the New Hampshire one was pretty fucking bad. The civil rights.
Which
we want to abolish the civil rights, and not because of the content itself. I agree with what was said. It was the way it was said, and then the very ballsy, like, look at our impressions. It did so well. Just throwing in the face of everyone who has a marketing background. It made me cry a little bit. Not really, but like on the inside, I was crying.
So to me, the most offensive thing the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire ever did on Twitter was brag about the impressions, break the fourth wall, and brag about a metric they were chasing, not even the content they put out.
Yeah.
Like, I can excuse the content. I can argue and debate people on that thread. For me, I saw every time the New Hampshire Libertarian Party tweeted something awful, or what was perceived as awful, I took it as an opportunity to engage people. And I got success out of engaging the people in their comments and mentions. I think the worst thing an individual has done was whoever runs Gary Johnson's Twitter account fanning the flames on that.
I know that person.
I do too. But even Gary Johnson has come out and been upset about the fanning of the flames with his account.
Yeah.
So
pretty funny. I did laugh a little bit there, but
so I think the biggest takeaway there.
I think it was the civil rights tweet. Just the freshest one in my memory, and not
the child labor one.
That's up there too, but that's just because I do messaging like for a living, and not to like toot my own horn, but I'm really fucking good at it.
So how would you word the civil rights tweet?
I actually did write a tweet for Libertarian Party of Ohio that addressed that entire thing. So if you're going to talk about things like that, that typically the left cares more about, that's their sacred cows, you have to attack it from a left perspective. You have to say, it's not really about abolishing the civil rights movement or the Civil Rights Act, but it's addressing the fact that the Civil Rights Act didn't really solve the things it set out to solve. It just kind of whitewashed it, and then everyone's like, oh, look, racism is solved, and slapped a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. So it's about addressing the things that the Civil Rights Act was supposed to address. So it's not really like, oh yeah, fuck the Civil Rights Act, but like, let's go in there and actually solve those problems, so we can't just sit back and be like, oh, we solved it already, so like, fuck you guys. And then there was like a bunch of other shit in there too, that because it was 4 things. So I actually did like a whole ass tweet thread for Libertarian Party of Ohio, because like they asked me to help out with a response, because they're like, we're getting tagged in this and this is horrible. It's like, yeah. So I did a little bit of research and we did a whole thread. So like, talk about those things from the left, talk about how it didn't solve racism, obviously, because here we are. And then what was the other part of that? I don't remember now.
Well, regardless of that other part, that brings me to something like,
okay.
With Gary Johnson's account fanning the flames against the party and membership fanning the flames against the party, is it even worse when the party fans the flames against membership?
It depends on the situation. If it's a completely off the rails thing that really does damage our reputation, because there are a lot of people who are open to libertarian messaging. They do agree with us on a lot of issues, and shit like that just stops all progress dead in its tracks, and then they turn around for another 5 to 10 years because it's ruined. Like it's brand reputation, where our reputation got fucked. Even though it was a state affiliate, and I get that, state affiliates have their own thing, but that's not how the public sees it. The public doesn't realize, oh, but that's only that one state, so I'm sure the rest of the LP is great. No, they see Libertarian Party and they associate anything that has that label on it as a whole, because that's what people do. Collectivism is human nature. So
I mean, I know we saw last week the Libertarian Party Mises Caucus of Massachusetts had responded to a tweet about how the Confederacy was evil with "Wait till you learn about the Unionists."
Mm-hmm.
And immediately the state party condemned them. The state party puts out a tweet condemning the Mises Caucus and its members for engaging in that conversation. And the conversation that the Mises Caucus had wasn't saying that the Confederacy was good. They were saying the Union was also evil. And by all historical accounts, slavery was on the path to abolition within the next 10 to 15 years anyways because of technological advances. And what in fact happened by engaging in the Civil War was the death of millions and economic conditions that actually made things worse for people in the South by creating a puppet government and just renaming slavery. Because people who were freed as slaves never left their plantations. They were put right back into sharecropping situations where they had no income because then they had to rent the land they were farming from the same plantation that held them as slaves.
Yeah, no, fuck the Union, definitely. But like, fuck the South too. I think that could have been worded a little bit differently, and I don't think the response from the state party was 100% necessary. I think in some other instances, for really bad shit, if the party wants to respond, I think that might be a good thing. If it's like incredibly reputation damning, they should respond. That would be helpful. But I think in that one, I mean, okay, so Massachusetts Mises Caucus probably should have done a follow-up tweet to that one.
They did.
Oh, they did. Okay. Yeah. See,
Yeah, the Massachusetts Mises Caucus did a follow-up tweet, explained their position, and the state party came back saying, no, you're just a bunch of racists, and has now gone the route of trying to expel members of the party because of their mean tweets.
Oh, boy. See, this is why I am not involved in state parties or anything. I am a hired gun for individuals, and I do direct action and mutual aid and not party stuff as much. Like I help the party. Like I'm working on a lot of things to like help build up like a knowledge base for the party because we have 50 years of institutional knowledge that just like goes out the window every year. There's no like storage of our knowledge, like, you know, everything for campaigns, platforms, all this other shit, like branding, none of that is stored in a central place. So when people start a campaign, they're like, well, we have to reinvent the wheel.
Well, it was stored in a central place.
That way, but I am done with bylaws and bullshit and dumbass factions and all the fucking simple people out there. Yeah, no, fuck the party.
All that knowledge was stored in a central place. It's just nobody knew about it.
LPaction.org?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, okay, did you...
It wasn't the best knowledge in the world, but it was what they had.
Some of the communication stuff and who it was written by?
It was all incredibly relevant when she wrote it 20 years ago.
Sure.
So it wasn't the best like repository of knowledge out in the world, but it was there. It was a party resource.
It was structured. I actually did find that, and I like the structure of the knowledge base. I don't like anything in it, and it was completely lacking like a ton of stuff. And it needed a submission thing, so I want people to be able to submit everything that they have and have like somebody on the admin side to like organize it and whatever. That's a whole thing though. But yeah, no, I'll do that stuff for the party and I'll help out and I'll do projects, but I am not involved. I'm not like going to be on an XCOM anytime fucking soon. No, you can't get me to run for anything. Fuck all that.
You say that you're going to move some point and you're going to show up to a meeting and walk to go to the bathroom and find out you've been elected.
I will throw a chair. I will be Bernie Sanders with the steel chair. Like if somebody does that to me, no.
We did that to Andrew Holding once. He wasn't even in the state. He had to miss this. We had a special convention, a business convention for LPNH, and Andrew wasn't even in the state. He was back in Ohio visiting family, and we nominated and elected him secretary and then texted him to inform him that he was the new secretary of the state party.
Oh, boy.
He didn't reject it. He did the job.
There's
But no, I do. To your point earlier, you'd said you showed up, you got 17 jobs. That's how you got started. I feel like that's honestly the big problem with the Libertarian Party as opposed to the Liberty Movement. Because the Liberty Movement has a lot of institutional knowledge. You have a lot of separate organizations focusing on their niche issues and their niche work and seeing in broad strokes success. You have the Free State Project and the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance working together to get liberty-leaning politicians elected in any major party. They don't care what major party they're elected in. And you see a lot of libertarians running as Republican or Democrat just based on what the big party in their district is.
Mhm.
But then we get things like constitutional carry. We get things like school choice passed. We get things like rejecting infrastructure bills that want to spend billions of dollars of federal money and increase property taxes for it. You get repeals of zoning ordinances passed because people are actually getting into office. You look at other organizations like Normal that has a lot of libertarians involved and are seeing success across the country in the push for the normalization of medical and recreational marijuana at varying levels in varying states. But the Libertarian Party is 50 years into its mission and still can't keep its own house in order.
They want to convert everyone to a libertarian, and they have these dumbass purity tests. And like I get the purity test. Like, I would want somebody to be a libertarian if they're going to run for internal office, but there needs to be levels of membership. Like, okay, so this idea I have, and I don't know the specifics of how it works or whatever, but we need to have some kind of like introductory period of new members to where we can partner with all of these other organizations that you just mentioned, like Normal, and I know you're going to hate me for this, but like Cato and Reason. But like they do have some knowledge, okay? Like I was just as pissed as like anyone else about the stupid shit that came out about the mandates and vaccines and all that bullshit. But I'm just saying we have these institutions that have a lot of resources and that can educate people. So they sign up to be a member, and for a year or two, they would get weekly emails like, hey, here is a free ebook on property rights or some shit, and then here is a like educational video on the Fed, and like all these things to just teach them about all the different elements of libertarianism, and that keeps them engaged. It keeps them wanting to learn more. They will be much more likely to show up to a meeting and get involved and show up for volunteer opportunities, kind of train them to the culture of the LP, and then after like an introductory period, then they're like qualified to run for office or whatever.
Well, the problem there is like running for office internally, I get it, but if somebody wants to run for office, like we had this problem in New Hampshire. I ran for Congress 2 years ago to primary somebody because the Libertarian Party in New Hampshire had major party status, and some rando kook decided he was going to file to run for Congress as a libertarian.
Was it Max Abramson?
No.
Oh.
No, not Max Abramson. Max Abramson has switched parties more times than Bill Weld. But this was a guy, Tom Alcier, who, like, when we looked him up, is like, oh, he was a member of the Libertarian Party in the 80s and 90s. Oh, he was expelled in the Libertarian Party for advocating violence and terrorism. And honestly, I looked up his statements, and they'd be pretty fucking mainstream compared to shit libertarians are saying today. Like, especially with the anti-cop sentiment and the all cops are bastards stuff that's come to be kind of the forefront of libertarian ideology and anarchist takeover of the Libertarian Party in the past few years. But 20 years ago, when he was giving a speech as an elected libertarian state rep on the state house floor, saying that it was people's responsibility to execute cops in the street for their own self-defense, the Libertarian Party kicked him out and expelled him. So he decided he was going to run for Congress as a libertarian. So I'm like, fuck, fine. And I signed up to primary him. I got 80% of the vote in the primary. And we found out that every single vote he got, when we ended up like auditing the town by town results, was in a town where the random order had him on top. So like even libertarians have low information voters.
Oh yeah.
It's some
of the lowest information voters out there, actually.
But like I was involved in the state party for a whopping like 3 months before there became a need to run for office, and because the state party had no control. In fact, even Darryl Perry went to the state and actually tried to get the state to remove the guy from the ballot, and the state told him to fuck off. Wow. So, like, the party has no control over its own name or its own ballot line. So at what point do we stop fighting an uphill battle and just work to improve the image?
Yeah, I don't have all the answers there. I don't know. It's hard because we have a really bad image unfortunately. It's 50 years of bullshit. It's kind of been detrimental.
All right. So hypothetically, you're elected LNC chair tomorrow. What do you do to fix it?
Gross. I don't know. That's why I'm not running for chair.
What do you think the LNC could do to improve its image?
Start running fucking ads, for one.
Well, they're trying to do that right now, but nobody will donate because nobody trusts them to produce an ad that's worth running.
Yeah, except they only gave themselves 3 days to raise the money, and that was the poison pill right there.
Well, I had commented that when it first went live, like, we need $100,000 to run an ad. I'm like, produce it first. Like produce something, and I'll decide if I want to pay to run it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people shared that sentiment. It's just like, given the actions of the current LNC, given what they've been doing, given the woke culture that's infected and infested the LNC, people don't trust them to push out and produce quality content that they agree with. So that is the big issue that I had with them. I think that's the big issue a lot of the Mises Caucus type people had with it. And in the same time, they gave themselves 3 days to raise money to produce an ad and maybe run it. Dan Smots took 3 days to put together one of the best anti-lockdown ads I'd ever seen.
It was really good. I loved him.
But it's already gone semi-viral on the internet, like, with no money.
No ad budget.
Yeah. That's something he does in his spare time around a full-time job.
Yeah, no, if I was elected chair, I would put a major focus on digital marketing and advertising. Having actual, like, marketing professionals doing the marketing instead of a random person who might, like, boost a post for $5. Did you know during the campaign, they ran $2,700 worth of advertising on Facebook? And nothing on Google. No Google ads whatsoever. So that's no YouTube, no nothing. There was one county affiliate in New York State that ran a single $600 Google ad. That was it for 2020. Completely. They ran nothing. $2,700 worth of Facebook ads. Only 5 or 6 of them were for the campaign, and they weren't good. Their targeting was garbage. Their, like, impressions, like, all of the metrics for the ads were fucking garbage. And it made me really, really angry, first of all.
I spent more than that on my Senate run.
Yeah.
I spent more than that on my Senate run, and I ran targeted ads through Google. And I didn't run ads for YouTube or Hulu or any of that. I ran them for mobile games.
Yeah. I spent more money on a single local race in early 21 than the entire party did for advertising in 2020.
Didn't you spend that on a race that was running unopposed too?
It wasn't unopposed, actually. No, he had a write-in candidate, but the write-in candidate had 2 PACs supporting her, and she had the endorsement of every single sitting city official.
How did it work? What was the percentage for her as a write-in candidate?
17%.
Has there ever been a successful write-in candidacy other than Lisa Murkowski?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I've the only write-in.
There was a dude in Virginia who, like, ran for Senate as a write-in, and he won.
State Senate?
Maybe.
Okay. Because I remember
he's like a really big dude at Yale or something. I don't fucking know. I don't remember his name, but he was big on gun rights. But yeah, no, she was set to win, and I came in, like, the last month, and we fucking blew her out of the water.
Yeah. I remember the most successful writing campaign I've ever heard of was Lisa Murkowski in Alaska. She ended up losing the primary in a very, very low turnout primary because a major blizzard hit all 3 major cities in Alaska, and hardly anybody could get out on election day. She then approached the Libertarian Party, who had no candidate, and was able to nominate in convention, and asked if they'd put her on the ballot in exchange for her funneling a couple of $1 million into the Libertarian Party of Alaska in donations. Really? And they said no, because she wasn't libertarian enough. And so she ran a write-in campaign and won. So, like, those are funny stories to me. And this one time I ran a meme campaign for Andrew Olding in New Hampshire, where we didn't have a candidate for sheriff. And in order to get on the ballot without petitioning, somebody would have had to win the write-in by primary, which isn't just get 2 votes against 0 to win. You have to meet a minimum threshold in New Hampshire for a write-in on the primary. And I put out a meme one time on one Facebook page, said, everybody write in Andrew Olding for sheriff. And then the day after election day, he gets an email informing him that he's won the election for sheriff. And it would be on the general election ballot. We're like, wait, what? To find out that like almost every libertarian in Hillsborough County wrote Andrew in for sheriff because of one meme I put on Facebook.
Nice.
And then he chose not to run.
Wow. That would have been potential for a really fun campaign.
Would it be as fun? Okay, speaking of messaging and fun campaigns, do you think Aria DeMezzo's "Fuck the Police" campaign, when she was running for sheriff, was inappropriate or fun?
I don't know enough about it to make that determination.
She won the Republican primary by accident. She paid $2 to file her name in the Republican primary and won by being listed alphabetically first. And then the news is like, holy shit, a transgender Satanist just won the Republican nomination for sheriff. And so she printed up a whole bunch of yard signs and plastered the entire county with yard signs that just read, "Fuck the police."
I love it. It's so wholesome.
Right.
I don't know enough. Like, I would have to like look at the demographics, and like, there's my gut reaction and like my personal reaction, which is like, that's fucking awesome and wonderful, and I love it. But like, objectively looking at, you know, metrics and demographics and like the, you know, boring ass campaign voting shit, yep. I don't know.
Right. Well, it comes down to, it's a fun question to ask, because last time you were on for the Late Night Libertarians episode, you and Bill got in a big argument about messaging and what was appropriate messaging versus what was successful messaging. And one of the commenters after the fact had commented on the video saying how weird it is to see somebody arguing for more respectful messaging whose tagline is "Fuck McCain," because you joined with the name "Rest in Hell, John McCain."
Yeah. I'll stand by that till the day I die. No, and it's not even like more respectful. It's just like a little bit more tactful, I guess, and like knowing your audience, knowing who you're speaking to, and being able to like segment out your messaging. Like, if you're talking to anarchists, you can talk as an anarchist. If you're talking to like 70-year-old Republicans in a small town who have never had an instance of police brutality ever, maybe that's not the best way to go about it. Like, you have to know your audience. You have to speak to your audience. To take this from Spike, like, meet them where they are, you know, speak their language, make it connect with them on an emotional level. That's how you do it. And sometimes, like, if your back is against the wall and like there's no way in hell you're gonna win, you might as well have fun with it. But it's very like case by case, and there's a lot of nuance in this conversation. Yeah.
So it's never inappropriate to say John McCain belongs in hell.
I would literally say that to Meghan McCain's face.
I have. It got me blocked on Twitter.
Well, no, I mean like face to face, like in person. Be like,
oh, I tried.
Nice to meet you. Fuck your dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
no,
if anybody's out there, bullying Meghan McCain is.
It is so much fun.
The best use of your time on Twitter.
Every time a warmonger dies, I literally like my heart races a little bit, and then I like get up and dance, and I'm like super happy, jumping around the house, like fuck yeah, Rumsfeld's dead. And then like I write like 50 tweets and I save them all to drafts and I just fire them up all day. It's so great. It's the best day of my life.
All right, so who's next for you? Who has to be next? Janie? Not Bill Crystal, not...
Or, I mean, sure, like, they can all go. If Victoria Nuland decided to have a coronary, that'd be great, too. I really, really don't like her. And I don't see a lot of people in the Liberty movement, like, trashing Victoria Nuland much, but she was Cheney's foreign policy advisor. She was Satan behind the Satan. And you know what she is right now? She's like Deputy Secretary of State or some shit. Like, she's in the cabinet for the Biden administration, and she's starting, you know, her, you know, Russia bullshit again. And I have a whole ass conspiracy theory with foreign policy, and I thought maybe I was crazy, but I did 3 days of research on this shit. I went way down the rabbit hole. I was starting to get ads in Ukrainian. Like, it was weird. Every time I heard like any noise outside, I was like, well, Hillary Clinton's gonna come kill me now. But I came up with this whole thing, and then I sent it to like Spike and other people who like are really knowledgeable at foreign policy. They're like, actually, that's legit. So I'm not crazy. But yeah, no, I have this whole last conspiracy theory of what's going to happen now, because it wasn't just Newland. It was Blinken, and then Uzra Zaya, the chick who like orchestrated Arab Spring, and there was like 4 or 5 different people, which all together was like the perfect storm for we're going to war with Russia.
Sooner or later.
It's coming. And like 6 things on my conspiracy have already happened. So it's happening. Yeah, no, we need to go after Newland. If she dies next, that'd be awesome. But yeah, I really want to see Cheney go. Whether it's Dick or Liz, whatever.
Either one?
Either one, yeah. Because I'm really sick of seeing liberals praise Liz Cheney for being like, oh, look, she doesn't like Trump. I was like, yeah, that's the bare fucking minimum you should be asking of your elected officials, you dumb fuck.
Liz Cheney blocked me on Twitter.
Like, yeah. I hate that shit. They're like, oh my God, she's like just this upstanding, most awesome person. I'm like, no, she's a fucking horrible person. Like, even her crazy ass, terrible human being, genocidal father, like whenever her sister came out as gay, he was like, you know what, you're my daughter, I accept you. When Liz heard about it, she's like, nope, disowned. Like, she's fucking horrible. She was promoting the birtherism bullshit with Obama. Like, I'm no Obama fan, but like that was bullshit. She was spewing all this like anti-Muslim hatred bullshit, and now liberals are like, oh my God, yes, queen. Like, fuck you.
She blocked me on Twitter because I forget what we were arguing about, but I told her she needed to go quail hunting with her father.
Nice.
So, all right, that's our hour. It's been a fun show. Tell everyone where they can follow you.
Okay, you can follow me here on Twitter it's at Caleb Cloven now. It's Anarcho-Mom is my username, and there's a corn next to it. It's a long story. I'm on Facebook and Instagram at Anarcho-Mom. But I have a Patreon for digital marketing and social media and basically everything I do. I have a Patreon for. So you can find me at Patreon, Caitlin Cloven. I think it's called Just the Tips because my Patreon is very loosely based on sexual innuendo, even though there's nothing sexual on it.
All right. Well, it has been a blast. And until next time, be free. Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed the show. If you want to catch more, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications for future episodes. You can follow me directly on Twitter at O'Donnell, the number 4NH, to keep up to date with what I'm working on. And if you want to be among the first to support this channel, check out our Patreon link in the description. And as always, don't forget to head on over to sneckswag.com to get your freshest Liberty swag today. Until next time, be free, everybody.